It's 6 p.m. on a Friday night. It's raining lightly, and you've just gotten home from work or school. With nothing else to do, you pass the next few hours reading scary stories, watching ghost videos, researching mysterious disappearances. As you do, you feel a dim but growing sense of paranoia, of not being alone, and you periodically feel a need to look over your shoulder, waiting for your eyes to adjust to the darkness behind you. Eventually, you decide you want a snack or have to use the bathroom, but you hesitate. You feel a reluctance in opening your door to make your way down the hall. Even with the hallway light on, you can still feel unseen eyes on you, watching from every door open to a darkened room. You finally work up the nerve, slowly making your way to your destination to accomplish your task, not wanting to spend one more second with the blind corners, the windows, and the darkness. You jog back to your room, very aware of the growing darkness behind you as you flick off all the lights along your path. You feel chased, and though you know the feeling to be irrational, you nevertheless think you may have faintly seen something in the crack of your door as you swing it shut and lock it. Back in your room, you now find yourself strangely comfortable. Sure, you're still jumpy, but in here it's different somehow. With the lights on, the blinds down, and only the sounds of your creaking house and the wind and the rain outside, you crawl into bed, cocoon yourself in blankets, and continue to consume that precious nightmare fuel. For whatever reason, I've long found that fear and comfiness tend to accompany each other. But why? For starters, I think at least a small part of this has to do with nostalgia. Both the public and elementary school libraries where I used to sit and read ghost stories were really old and creepy, but the fact that there were other people around stopped it from getting too scary to be fun. If you've been into this stuff from an early age like me, you've probably had similar experiences where the spookiness of these things was accompanied by the calmness of being in a safe place. And whether consciously or not, these feelings form an association with each other, which are recalled when you freak yourself out today. Until a few years ago, I thought it was as simple as just liking scary things. But I came to realize that it's really the sense of safety that defines the feeling I'm talking about. See, I've spent a lot of time exploring abandoned places, and I've only really felt unnerved a handful of times. And the one time it wasn't a fun experience, at least in the moment, was the time when that sense of safety was stripped away. I was on the property of the local psych hospital, not even intending to go in that day, when I met a group who wanted to pass through the tunnels to get to another building. I offered to take them to the tunnel entrance, as I knew roughly where it was, though I hadn't yet been in that area myself. I got them down to a sub-basement, and from there, we quickly found the entrance and parted ways. I began to leave, and it was only then that I started to realize something. This basement was really scary. It was a winding labyrinth of split paths, odd angles, and open doorways that led nowhere. What's more, I hadn't intended to enter that day, so all I had was my phone for light, and it was on like 2%. This was my first time really being alone in an abandonment, and I kept spinning my head around at every odd shadow or distant sound of dripping water. I could feel eyes on me as I wandered, and it was really bothering me that at any given time there were a dozen different angles that I couldn't watch at once. This was anything but the relaxing experience I normally find exploring to be. Because of this, I've come to believe the primary factor in differentiating cozy fear from fear is a sense of there being a presence of danger, but also an insulation from it. I found this feeling to be very closely emulated in the Resident Evil 2 remake. After you've progressed a certain amount, you're relentlessly pursued through the police station by Mr. X, an unkillable giant who can always be heard stomping around looking for you, all while you still have several objectives that need to be completed in the area. It's a very panic-inducing part of the game, as his loud footsteps make it clear that he's always in play and can catch up to you at any time. Any time, that is, except when you're in the save rooms. Once I found that he couldn't enter, I started to find the booming sound of his footsteps actually created a kind of comfortable ambiance to the save rooms. Why? Again, it's something to do with that feeling of insulation. You can hear him outside trying to find you, and you know he can't ever find you in here. It's like sitting in a parked car when it's raining heavily. You know if you stepped outside, you'd get soaked and end up cold and uncomfortable, but in here? In here, you can just sit back and listen to the patter of rain on the roof, watching the drops roll off the windshield. That's why you lock yourself in your room, afraid to step out, but in no way ready to stop reading. You feel safe in your room because outside, there's windows and blind corners and dark rooms where someone could see you without you seeing them. In your room, there's a completeness of information. Lock the door, close the blinds, turn on the lights, and now you've got your own little save room where there's no gaps in your awareness to fuel your anxiety. You know that if you were to step outside, you'd feel watched. But in here, you're insulated, safe from the feeling of unsafety. I know this was kind of vague and unspecific, and to be honest, I haven't actually heard anyone talk about this before, which is why I'm having some difficulty articulating it. So I'm curious to know if this is something that a lot of people can relate to. If you experience this feeling or have any thoughts on why it happens, please let me know in the comments, as I'm very interested in hearing your opinions on this.